Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.
Good afternoon. It's the 9th of October. Moving right along. We're at, what is it now? Month 7 of the war in Ukraine. They're blowing up bridges again. And what else? Oil prices are going up because production is being cut. And, oh yeah, the thing that I can't stop thinking about, some dick cop decided to shoot a kid who was eating a hamburger at McDonald's in a stationary vehicle. He just walked up and opened the door. Kid freaks out. And
because he thought it was somebody he had chased before.
Yeah, but that's still not a reason to go open up some.
No, of course, it's not. He didn't just do some random person, and he thought this is why it's fucking stupid. He thought it was somebody he had chased before.
Yeah,
and then he walked up. You know, there's no warrant or some sort of like case that he had reference to let the person know, like, you're under investigation, which is like,
yeah, there was no, he didn't announce himself. He just walked up and opened up the door of someone's car. Oh man,
because he thought it was someone, and that's why it's like, it's more egregious because he thought it was someone he had chased before. And that's what I mean. It's like, it's one thing if it's like, oh, I think something's happening and I'm doing something. That's a different type of offense. And this is why, again, it's like this notion that the police are the law.
Man, it's like some vigilante shit.
Exactly. That's why it needs to be. They need to be defunded. This type of vigilante justice is not, they shouldn't be walking around armed. First off, it's like there's no fucking reason for a cop to have a fucking gun. Absolutely not.
He shot some 17-year-old in a McDonald's parking lot. That's some gangster shit. That's some vigilante bullshit. That's like unreal. Now you can't even go to fucking McDonald's because you're gonna get shot. Oh my god.
I mean, they're coming into people's homes. Like, no one's safe from cops. And that's what I mean. Like, they should not be armed. There's no fucking reason for them to be armed. And if anybody says otherwise, they don't understand how escalation works. A gun always escalates a situation. There are means by which people can protect themselves from guns without needing another. A gun doesn't actually protect you. That actually just is another offensive weapon. We need to diffuse the notion that a gun is a defensive weapon. It's not a defensive weapon. Period. Never. At any point, it's a counter offense. If anything.
Wait, there's a gun.
Only offense.
So there's a gun now that deploys a shield.
No.
or emits some kind of electromagnetic field that can stop other projectiles, kinetic projectiles.
In video games.
Okay, I was just making sure, because unless that exists, like, hold on, let me deploy the gun shield, or the shield gun, until that exists. And why would a shield even be deployed by the gun? That doesn't even make any sense.
This is like, they'll use riot shields and have an opening and use a gun through it, but that's because they're fucking stupid. Again, this is the notion of like...
But that's like a modern phalanx type thing, right?
Right, and the idea is like, cops shouldn't be able to execute people without a trial, and that's what's happening in any time the cops end up killing somebody. That's an execution without a trial is what just happened. Or an attempted execution. If that cop is shooting at that kid, that he's trying to execute So there's no, whatever you think about the death penalty, we're supposed to do a trial as American citizens. So when the cop is able to execute someone without a trial, that's fucking Judge Dredd. That's all that is. We're living in the Judge Dredd megacity situation.
Like, I've read a new concept recently that I think is just absolutely terrifying. Normally, there's this whole like notion of like shoot to kill. People shoot to kill. They don't just like shoot all willy nilly at things just to scare them off. You know, that's like that's just not, I guess, responsible firearms practice. But apparently, there's this concept called shoot to wound, which is just like the most merciless. What the hell are these people even doing?
That's not something that's allowed by the Geneva Convention. Like maiming someone.
Yeah,
it's not like our military is actually held to higher standards than our cops, which is again why the notion of these fucking domestic terrorists as being framed as if they're serving and protecting is just completely disconnected from reality. They've always been forces that were used to terrorize Black people and oppressed communities. And the problem was that white people weaponized those things because they were typically immune from them, but now they're not immune from it. So that's when it's a problem, because white people are no longer able to go places without the fear of dying from cop. Like some of them think that they still have that, but they're actually not still protected from that anymore. So that's where like we're at the point. It's like for the first class citizens, they're not going to be upset because they weren't under threat, like under direct threat before. Now they are under direct threat, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. So it's only a matter of time before the cops get defunded because they've started killing white people. And that shit, like that's not going to stand is what it comes down to. It doesn't matter if it's Black people, if it's Mexicans, if it's Chinese people. When white people start dying at the hands of cops, that's when that shit becomes a problem. And they've killed too many white people in the last 10 years for them to keep on this trajectory. Like, even white people are not going to be able to like allow the cops to keep murdering people in the streets with impunity. Because again, it's one thing when they can call the cops and the cop shows up and it's like, oh, the Black person, we're going to go after them. But it's not that black and white anymore. And the cops will shoot white people, which is where it's like, they'll hesitate, which is funny to see cops hesitate when like white people are the offenders, how they don't want to go for their gun.
Man, body camera footage has like changed everything.
Yeah, it really has. You can see that when like a white person is a violent offender, the cops try to like talk them down first. And then if the person charges them or some shit, then they'll shoot. But if the person runs away, if they're Black, they'll shoot. If they're white, they'll yell, sir, you need to stop. And then it's like they'll pursue a chase. And then it becomes a chase where that's what it should be. If that's what the force is meant to do, it's what you can't shoot somebody and kill them because you're not fast. That's not an excuse to like give cops a reason to be able to start shooting at people when they're running away. Oh, this motherfucker's 300 pounds and he's slow. Well, that's not a reason for him to start shooting. And when cops were given that impunity because most of them are fat, lazy fucks that can't move, you know, some of them can because they have to carry around this utility belt.
Some of those dudes are like roided out.
Right, but
Holy
that
shit,
doesn't carry over into good cardio.
So no, sure.
They may be able to sprint for like 10 yards, but by that 10 yards, they're fucking gassed and breathing heavy, and
But
that's
that
why they
10
want to pull
yards
out
there,
their gun.
like, is fucking fast. I've only witnessed it a few times, like in front of the. You know, almost every time I've seen the police engage civilians, it's been in front of the Bluebird. Now that I think about it, there's only been a few times when it's in front of Kilroy's, but it's almost always at Bluebird. And I've only seen a foot chase a few times, and those guys are so quick. I mean, they're chasing drunk people, so it's not like it's not like a real serious contest, but.
Well, and then with that cop, it turns out it wasn't the same car. So he mistook it. It was a mistake. And that's even more. This is why it was so egregious. Because that's, again, it's like when a cop's just harassing somebody, that's one type of offense. But when this person this is a grudge. This is a full-on grudge that this person carried because somebody got away. And because they thought this other person was the original offender, now this guy's getting shot at. This kid is getting shot at because this cop has
his
a passenger grudge.
Too. He has a passenger,
yeah,
who fortunately didn't get shot, but like the driver, ended up in critical condition. Drove himself like halfway to the hospital or some shit. They found him in a parking lot, right? Something like that.
Well, the cop's been fired.
Yeah, well,
that's the issue. Is once he's been fired, they're not going to protect him, so he may actually have to face charges for this because yes, he fired in a place that put a lot of other people in danger. And
he shot
the fact that he didn't hit anyone, right? And make the number of people,
and then chased after the car towards the street while shooting. Oh man, that video is just nuts.
So the investigation is still happening. It's not over. So him losing his job is actually a sign that he may face some sort of repercussions, where it's like the issue is that the cops just weren't facing any sort of repercussions. And there are some cases where like somebody, like a black man was shot not too long ago and he was running away and he was killed, and the cop just was let off because they said it was justified. Where it's like, for every case where somebody gets like a repercussion, there's probably 10 other cases where there's no repercussions.
Man, the ones that bother me the most are when they shoot some young man, and then they get the guy's on the ground bleeding out, and then the police officer stands there and is like, or gets down and tries to render aid. He's like, "Now stay with me, buddy. Stay with me, buddy." Like, bro, you just shot this guy. You can't call him
more than
buddy.
Often, they're gonna handcuff somebody that's bleeding out. They're gonna handcuff them and still subjugate them before even getting to that point. And
sure,
it's like, but that's what's so fucked up is like that. Oh, you're gonna get rendered aid. That person's probably like choking on blood, and has been handcuffed before that point happens.
But it's the whole buddy part. They just shot the guy and then they're calling him buddy. That's just sinister as fuck.
Yeah, they're not good people.
Oh, that's just horrible. That's just horrible.
They very rarely actually stop crime. It's like they come, pretend to be a cleanup crew, and then just end up traumatizing more often than not. So cops aren't good people. If I had another number to call if something was happening that it would definitely not bring cops here, I would call that every fucking time something's happening, even if guns were involved. It's like I don't want cops anywhere around because they just make shit worse 9 times out of 10. Because then it's like, if somebody, okay, for example, there was a man walking around, like it was probably 11 or 12 at night, maybe it was even after midnight, looking for a ride, knocking on people's doors, asking people for rides. I'm like, hey man, first off, you shouldn't be asking people for rides around here. You shouldn't just get a fucking taxi. If you don't have the money, you need to start walking, but you can't be knocking on people's doors. And I'm like, I don't know you. You need to get out of this apartment complex, or somebody's gonna call the cops. Meaning me, if I see him do that again, which is where it's like, my thing is like, I don't know this dude. I don't know what he's doing. He's lucky I don't just come out the door beating his ass for knocking on my door this late. And it's like, that is an obviously irrational response. But I've seen Clockwork Orange. I know how the person pretends to, like, the whole Good Samaritan story is like a multi-thousand-year story about people pretending to need help and then jacking you because you thought helping them was the right thing to do. That's what the whole story about Good Samaritan is about.
A buddy of mine tried to get a dog on Facebook and went to the house to go pick up the dog, and when he called some dude,
mistake number one.
Yeah,
you can't go to the house. You're supposed to go to public meeting places.
Right. Well, he goes to the house and he calls, and some fucking giant bull of a man comes out with a freaking gun, waving his gun around, yelling at him, and he just got set up to go knock on some stranger's door, get robbed. Who knows what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
Like,
and that's where. No, and that's where there's all these things, like that type of situation. That's why there's
you never know what's on the other side of the door.
Usually around a police station for any sort of like online exchanges, but people don't use them because they get lazy. But again, it's like there's only so much you can do to protect yourself from that situation anyway.
Sure.
But that's where I'm like, that dude ended up walking to somebody. He walked to somebody else's door. So I called the fucking cops on him. But I'm like, who knows? The cops might escalate that shit. I told him, like, if you do that again, somebody's going to call the cops. Again, indicating me. But I didn't want to call the cops. If I wanted to call them, I would just call them immediately because this dude knocked on my door just to diffuse it. Like, and so I didn't have to. But me trying to give this man a chance to not have to deal with the fucking police is, then he fucks it up because he's white and doesn't think it's serious. So that's why I'm like, you drunk white dude, you're going to fucking have to deal with the cops now. So good luck with that shit. Because you think you can just get away with breaking laws and knocking on people's doors after fucking midnight. So that's where I'm like, these white dudes are so used to the law letting them off. That's why they fucking offend. And that's why they drive drunk all the fucking time and do this dumb shit to break the law where you're like, oh yeah, officer, I'm a little tired. And then they drive them fucking home. They do that shit up until the 90s, and then they start throwing them in jail. Well, the dudes are used to that behavior, so they keep fucking doing it. So you have a ton of white men who are so used to not getting any repercussions that when they actually start getting repercussions, it's not going to change their behavior. At first. But the issue is like, well, fucking COVID comes along, and these dudes are still used to no repercussions, and they start dying. So that's where we're actually like the COVID repercussion that they can't avoid is the one that's actually killing them off. Where you look at the numbers in disparity between Democrats and Republicans on death from COVID, it's a 30% gap. And in some cases, it's like 153% death rate from COVID because they're Republican. And it's
like red states.
Yes. with states with Republican governors, because these people didn't think that they would have any repercussions. It's literally that specific demographic of them thinking, oh, the law doesn't apply to me. This repercussion doesn't apply to me. And especially when the craziest shit is when COVID first started, it was disproportionately affecting minorities and people of color, because those people were on the front lines of service. And when that was the narrative, those white people were like, oh, let it hit those communities. And in the process, they stopped masking up. They never started getting vaccines. And then it started hitting their communities. And then they were like, oh, no, that's fake news. So they didn't want to acknowledge it's no longer disproportionately affecting Black people in the same way that it was at first, or Native Americans the way it was at first. But white people in those demographics that were originally feeling immune and protected, they're not good at changing their perspective anyway. So I don't think they have grasped that COVID is hitting them way harder than anybody else now. So they're going to lose their fucking political influence. When you got 1 million voters wiped off, most of those people that died are most likely Republican. Not to say that this is like a disease that recognizes political party, but when political parties push certain behaviors and one party specifically pushes anti-scientific behaviors that then make those people, put those people at risk of death, well, then it is disproportionately on one party. So it's like the next few elections that happen, we're going to see how COVID has affected the landscape. And I suspect that a lot of those places that have been gerrymandered into being red, that weren't actually red, but gave the appearance of being red because of gerrymandering, and then other people having their access to voting made very difficult because their voting stations would be put somewhere not remotely like available to them. Those types of things are not going to be able to prop up a party that was not as present as a two-party system would make it seem, in that when you have a declining white population that's trying to make it seem like it's a global population decline, that's not true at all. Those people are actually not 50% of the political landscape. It's more like 40%, but because of the gerrymandering, they're still able to give the appearance of 50%. So this is why when you have all of those things in place to preserve your influence, but then you lose 1 million people to fucking COVID, those gerrymandering districts or gerrymandered districts and Herschel Walkers aren't going to be able to hold on to that political power.
Oh, fucking Herschel
in the
Walker.
Same way.
That guy.
Yeah. Or Kanye's. Because it's like they'll take these black folk and make them seem like they're welcome in the club, but it's really just to like get enough black people to vote for that person with the guise of, oh, Republicans are actually thinking about us now. No, they're just, any type of racial politics are always meant to manipulate, whether it's on the left or right.
Well, he's gonna bridge black people with football fans.
They thought
that's what they thought. That's where that Venn diagram is targeting.
That's where that simple approach leads one to think. But those football fans are the leave politics out of my football. So it's like you're really only actually going to get white voters who were going to vote for him anyway because he was Republican.
They focused on the narrowest cross section.
Yeah, and it's like that mistargeted outreach that, because they think Americans are simple-minded, but they think they are that simple-minded. That's like, oh, we take this black football player. It don't matter if he's got a bunch of kids that he has from like mothers that were not his wife. or aborted babies, even though he's supposed to be a pro-life
Well, he's
candidate.
he can say he's pro-life and still have paid for abortions.
Or no, anti-choice. So I'm sorry, he's anti-choice.
Yeah.
Well, that
that's
whole framing of pro-life is not acceptable in that they are not pro-life, they're anti-choice.
Yeah.
So we can't, when we have these anti-choice candidates presented as if because he's a black former football player, he's going to actually garner support, or because Kanye was a rapper and is black, he's going to garner support. That shit never fucking works. Kanye got like 3 fucking votes, and it was some white dudes who was trying to like impress some chicks that they were trying to get laid with.
What part of Kanye being a fashion designer means that he has any insight into politics? Or what part of Herschel Walker being some kind of award-winning footballer means that that has any kind of insight into governance? Like, how is our society even making these kinds of leaps? I just don't get it. I mean, I know that there's a significant portion of American culture that doesn't take Kanye seriously at all.
Well, a significant portion of Americans don't understand how governance works, and they think it's just being popular. They just think, oh, this senator is really popular, and that's why he wins fucking elections, instead of like understanding that the House and the Senate have to vote on things, and they have to like read a bunch of bills. Well, their interns have to read a bunch of bills and tell them what's in the bills, and then they have to vote on those bills. And there's a lot of actual shit that goes on beyond just campaigning. But in Americans' minds, I think campaigning is actually all they consider. It's like, oh, you go to town halls and like shake people's hands and kiss babies, and that's being a politician. And it's like being strong in public and like being a great orator, that's being a politician. And it's like, well, that's part of it. Yeah, as far as now.
But wait,
and I'm sure there's always
you just
been
described
some
a performer,
aspect.
though.
Right. Well, it's always been even the way the elections in the 1800s and even before have been described as it is a performance. There's a lot of mudslinging. There's a lot of public debate that is involved. But that's with the campaign and election aspect, which is only meant to be a small part of the political operations, but ends up dominating, and you get basically individuals and super PACs basically fundraising and campaigning for entire terms instead of actually doing anything. And that's I think ultimately why Americans fall into that. Like, yeah, Herschel Walker, he's got charisma. He's like, he looks nice in a suit because he's got broad shoulders. He's got high cheekbones. He could be a good senator. He takes good pictures.
He's got good cheekbones. He's got a strong jawline. Yeah.
He's good at kissing babies. He hasn't dropped one yet. You know who's really good? The Rock kisses babies really well. He handled that baby. It's like you couldn't tell that he's a giant man the way that he cradled that baby and gave it a kiss on its head. That's a great politician right there. And that's, that's how I think I don't think I'm oversimplifying it. But that's also, that person is going to just like vote party line. So there are people who like give the appearance of being swayed by like political charisma or political game, but that person's just going to vote party anyway. So it's like very rarely do you get people like Barack Obama who are able to switch voters in districts and major strongholds of the opposition. And ultimately, I think what that came down to is the people that are actually in the political majority just mobilized and were not thwarted by the typical obstacles that were put in place to prevent voting. And like, I don't know if you remember when John Kerry conceded while people were still waiting in line. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
That he probably would have won that race if he hadn't conceded, but he never wanted. It seemed like he never really actually wanted to be president. But then what you realize is like the reason those people were still waiting in line is because of the obstacles that are put in place to make it so that when Democrats have the potential to win, they have to actually mobilize the party, whereas Republicans, they just have to basically get all the old people, and then they always end up making concessions for old people to not have to leave their homes, which is basically just white Republicans that they're appealing to, because then they don't really necessarily let older Democrats know about these mail-in vote. Like, Democrats have gotten better about mail-in vote, but you have to actually like have a reason. Like the fact that you have a job is not a reason, because they give technically supposed to give everybody election days off of work. So it's like, if you have a job, that doesn't just qualify you to mail in vote, which is fucking stupid. The idea that like you can't just mail in your vote, especially like the early votes are ridiculous too. It's like, if there's a certain point where I know who I want to vote for, just let me fucking mail in my vote. The idea that they like block it off and don't let you mail in your vote before a certain date, there are certain things that you know, it just makes it slightly more difficult for people to vote, just enough to make it so that, again, because Democrats are not the ones to do these types of strategies, the evil fucking gerrymander shit, they're the ones that suffer the consequences. Like,
they've got to leave enough space. They got to leave enough time for somebody to potentially uncover evidence of wrongdoing, so they could get the person off of the ballot. The whole it's just
Democrats are never going to raise that shit anyway.
Yeah, so but the Republicans would love to get the Democrat off
exactly.
The ballot.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like that shit is only going to affect the Democrats, because the Democrats never play that game. Like, they're not going to be like, oh, this Republican has this leads into another thing. Mark my words, this election, you're going to have about 1 million probably dead Republicans voting in districts around the country because of all these dead COVID vote. Like, the dead COVID voters, I guarantee you're going to get a shitload of Republicans just realizing that their constituents are fucking dead, but using them to trying to get their votes anyway. I fucking guarantee it. I don't know. I don't think it's going to actually reach like 1 million, but I guarantee there's going to be at least 1,000. At least a fucking 1,000.
The ones that they identify as
a
dead.
Lot. 1,000's already a lot. And that's what I mean. Like, when you lose 1 million votes in your party and you're not like resistant to doing dirty shit, they're definitely going to do some voter fraud using dead Republican voters this year or next election. I guess there is an election that just happened this year, but local shit. But the 2024, I'm gonna put the number between 1,000 and 100,000 dead voters. The issue is where they're concentrated. I don't think they'll be concentrated. I think it'll be spread around different districts where it'll be like 3,000 here and like 2,000 there, just trying to swing like local elections. And it's not necessarily something that I like. Well, in the process, yeah, they're going to vote for the national election, but I don't think that the fraud is like meant to be, or is going to play out on the national level, but more so on the local level, where again, it's like when you have somebody in like backwater fucking Mississippi who's already like giving away money to Brett Favre and like not really giving a shit about following rules anyway. That's the type of place where they're gonna lean on like 5,000 dead votes or some shit and think and assume that they're not gonna get any legal repercussions because Brett Favre didn't get any legal repercussions yet. The idea that like they funneled welfare money to Brett Favre and this motherfucker still hasn't had so much as like a handcuff, not one, a handcuff on his fucking wrist at all. That's why they do this type of shit, is because they assume if you're Brett Favre and you got enough money, yeah, you can break as many rules as you possibly want. Like what's the name? Ben Roethlisberger? I don't think the dude ever saw in the inside of a jail cell. You can do all kinds of shit if you're white and rich that OJ can't get away with as far as they think, which is why, like I said, that's why they do it. So I do think there is going to be rampant voter fraud. Not to go Alex Jones, because it hasn't happened yet, in the sense of it's one thing to be like, oh, there was massive widespread fraud. No, it wasn't. No, shut the fuck up. No, there wasn't.
No.
We are in a scenario where there could be.
We've made numerous predictions over the years, and several of them have come true.
A lot of them, actually.
And so
a lot of them.
Just go back through any of like the 400 hours of dialogue, and you can find quite a few gems that turned out. Just saying, we've got quite a backlog. I think that you might be onto something. If there was ever a time for rampant voter fraud to emerge, it'd be like on the tails of accusations of rampant voter fraud.
Oh shit! Oh wait, no, that's 2012. Because I was looking to see how many dead Republicans are registered to vote, and even in February of 2012, 1.8 million dead people were still registered to vote. Yeah. But there's
what, like, there's got to be a couple million dead people who are still registered to vote. How many people died? What's the death count for the COVID stuff? You know, I haven't even been looking that stuff up lately.
I don't know if they've been updating them anymore, you know?
Let's see if we got anything. ArcGIS, the COVID dashboard. Is it still functioning? Total deaths, USA. 1.062 million. 96 million total cases. And last updated today. So we're approaching 100 million total cases of COVID.
Oof.
With roughly 1.5 million cases a month.
Well, and then
we're still hitting 12,000 deaths a month.
If somebody has long COVID and dies from like a stroke, I don't think they count that as COVID. You know what I mean? So this is where it's like,
Maybe there's going to be
It's
like a
like 1 million.
COVID-related stroke disorder.
Right. And that's where I'm like, even if it's COVID-related stroke disorder, I don't think that would count as the same as like a direct COVID death, because like a direct COVID death is like while somebody has it and they're not able to like get enough oxygen or their organs break down while they have it. Like it becomes a comorbidity when it's long COVID. So that's what I mean. Like as a comorbidity, it just, if they're also like overweight, it's just the same as them being overweight, even though it's clearly not. Which is why the movement to like reduce the...
Holy crap, Germany had 122,000 new cases reported 2 days ago.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And then yesterday they had, where I can't even see them on this list. They didn't report yesterday. That's bad. That's really bad. Oh, man.
Yeah. Jeez.
122,000 cases reported in a country the size of like what, Washington and Oregon State combined. Whoa. They've only got 83 million people.
It's so weird because Indiana, it's like saying 0 new cases since like September 22nd, where I'm like, I don't buy that, which makes me wonder if they've just stopped updating the local numbers.
Let's see. Last updated September 29.
Oh, that's probably why then.
Yeah, they haven't updated, and I think they're only doing 7-day update, like maybe every 2 weeks or something.
That kind of makes sense.
Well, that just means that they reduced the number of staff that they have to keep their website up to date.
Well, Indiana seems to be under 10 deaths a day since September, which is like way down. Because at one point, I think it was like, I want to say it was like 1,000 deaths a day. So it couldn't have been 1,000. It was like, maybe it's 1,000 infections.
It looks like everything,
deaths.
all the numbers are trending down right now. Yeah. But this is like one of those things, like, last year around this time, the numbers were also trending down because we were at the end of summer. But then fall happened. Things got weird for 3 or 4 months. What was it?
Yeah, because then, okay.
What was it? It was Delta then still?
2020, in December of 2020, it was averaging like 100 deaths a day. That's when it was the worst. In Indiana.
But fortunately, our great leader has declared the pandemic is over. So we're all safe. The true believers, they go to heaven because they believe, and they don't get the vaccine because God will protect them. So either way, they win, right? I mean, that's like infallible logic.
No, we have a very colonized Christian right wing in America that their God is colonialism, whether they acknowledge it or not, colonialism and capitalism, but they like put a Jesus mask on it, and Jesus would literally whip them and flip their tables if he was present. That's the funniest part. Is why it's like it's so there's so much cognitive dissonance in like the idea that we're the richest nation in the world, quote unquote, with all these poor and houseless people, like 20 million houseless people.
Man, I see all these
we're
like
also
Buddhist
supposedly
and
a Christian
Taoist
nation.
and just Christian sayings, just religious ideas just spread all over the internet. And I keep thinking, Buddha would never be on the internet. He just wouldn't go on the internet. And I don't think Lao Tzu would spend time on the internet either.
Mm-mm.
I'm pretty sure Jesus wouldn't go online either.
Oh, it just feels like the internet has been a mistake. It just feels like a giant mistake.
So, well, not all of it, but a lot of it. A significant portion of it.
95%.
Yeah.
There's about 5%. Because even the cat pictures, it's like, I get what the cat pictures do, but because it ends up like distracting people from changing things, like even cat pictures like lull people into paralysis.
I mean, Facebook is our future, or is the future's version of our hieroglyphics now, right? Squares of imagery that are kind of difficult to decipher.
Only no, so
like a loose analogy
that's like,
here.
No, that's like I think that's like not a good analogy in that it'd be like comparing a Japanese calligraphic poem as if because it was like reductive, that was like the same as emojis. That's not the same at all. You know what I mean? And in that context, the way hieroglyphs have been made to be like wingdings or like as if it's just like the same as emojis, that's like colonialism reducing the complexity of hieroglyphs in that writing system to be the same as emojis. That's some like super colonialist shit. And that's what I mean. Like they've actively over the last, well, it also gets back to a lot of Egyptologists not knowing Egyptian and the Rosetta Stone not being discovered like at a certain time. So there's like all these things that allowed Western culture to frame it as if hieroglyphs were just these like wingding symbols that were just like loosely constructed, but they were representative of very specific concepts and a symbolic framework that is more akin to like cryptography than emoji. And that's where I'm like, when they have made it to the point where this whole culture's like symbolic framework has been equated to the symbols used by teenagers to express like
the spectrum of whatever emotions teenagers want to express in that moment in their
not
life.
even accurately, not even expressing the emotions that they don't even understand these emotions yet. When like Western culture has equated those two things, that's another means of them infantilizing Egyptian historic culture. So that's where they get the ancient alien shit. They could never be as advanced as us. Look, they use like emojis to talk. And it's shit like that like it's very, very common to sort of have Western culture like minimize these things as if they're equivalent to the way teenagers communicate. And that's like, it's so common, it's so prevalent. That's where like a lot of the American exceptionalism is rooted in the idea of like, oh, these people can't even like write correctly. When in fact, a lot of their culture was based around like oral history or oral tradition. And that's where it's not that they couldn't write, it's that in other cultures, oral tradition usurped written tradition. In not in every case, but again, it's like,
well,
making.
I mean, until the development of papyrus and like long-term storage of records, it would be really difficult to keep track of or to store records. A lot of early cultures, they tried keeping track of things on tablets made of like, stone. But that shit gets heavy and it takes up a lot of space. And I remember reading about the discovery of a knot-based, like knots and ropes, method of keeping track of inventory used in South America, I believe. And they were able to track gigantic, like bordering on industrial scale agricultural yields of crops. And they're doing it with ropes. So I don't think that it's necessarily like how do you even sustain a written tradition until you can preserve transcripts of any kind or records of any kind? I think that's the real key. I mean, the oldest library is in Africa, and they have literature, they have records that exist that predate everything in Europe. So maybe it's like a material or resource issue that really prevents written language from prospering or
Well, but that's the oldest literate library, whereas in Aboriginal culture, they have oral tradition that goes back supposedly 80,000 years, but they don't accept it because it's not written. So that's again, it's like, it's fucked up that every time something is called into question from Aboriginal historical accounts, there is usually something in Western culture to quote unquote confirm it. And a lot of this is like when they'll hit like a sedimentary layer in a dig or something, they'll be like, oh, well, this is in line with what the Aboriginals said about this flood, or this is what they said about this period of drought, and they were accurate or within 100 years or something. And it's like, we confirmed. It's like, no, they said it.
I mean, that's
they said it.
I think it makes sense within a culture that doesn't lie as fundamental to existence. Like, we live in a society where everyone breaks the law to get to wherever they need to be, on time. You can't see my air quotes, but I see people, breaking the speed limit ever. And our culture doesn't really seem to care. Everyone drives 40 in a 30 zone. And that's just the way it is. So if people are willing to bend, if people are morally or ethically flexible, then why would they trust someone else? But in a culture where people implicitly trust each other because their survival relies on it, I think an oral tradition makes a lot of sense. Because then once everyone is aware of history and is able to reflect on history together and to reinforce that history, now we have like a much more complex society that emerges, one that is able to reflect on its past. Ours has to create laws to prevent people from talking about its past because it's so fucking dirty. But ours is also the culture that breaks the law to get to work on time, so.
Yeah. There's a lot of contradictions in this specific culture, which is where it is really difficult to take any of this shit seriously just because of all the contradictions. Like the idea that people will get upset about the race of a fictional character. Like, that's a deeply unserious society.
or the skin tone of a fantasy creature.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, no one bats an eye at a green Gemini woman on Star Trek, or what is it? One of the Orions. Yeah, an green Orion woman.
I mean, but they didn't let fucking Cisco be a captain for 3 goddamn seasons. Yeah, they cared then too.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
They fucking nerfed him the whole time.
Yes.
Meanwhile, he's an interdimensional being that exists outside of time.
Or Geordi's like inability to have a normal sexual relationship and not have it be weird, or like make him some weirdly infantilized, non-aggressive, but also incel-looking creeper. Like,
man, Geordi was my favorite because he was the cyborg that made all the things possible. He could see things that nobody could see, that only Data could really appreciate, but Data still couldn't
terribly.
appreciate. That's
His
true.
Stories are written terribly. Like, Geordi's great in theory. I love Geordi as a concept, but when you go back and watch the episodes, he's written fucking horribly. Down to like the idea that he's like, now, oh, my visors went. Shut the fuck up, you poorly written character. And your technology is what enables you to see in the first place. So just changing it, now you're so used to this that you don't want to. Nah, man, fuck out of here with that. It's like the way that they wrote that character is just not only him. All of the characters are written poorly. Deanna Troi, fucking Dr. Crusher, Wesley, everybody's written poorly up until like season 4, and then
I think season 5 and 6 is where it really takes off.
Yeah, but it's because they stop the campy treatment of the characters while also realizing that they need to give them more depth and go in almost exact opposite directions as to which they were going, even down to like having Worf and Deanna hook up and shit like that, where you're like, why? But it's because they realized that, like, well, we kind of castrated Worf early on. We kind of like made him this sexless, joyless character. And it's like, if you look at Worf, he's fucking terribly written for like the first 5 seasons. And then finally, when he like gets this little piece of shit son that also is like even less wanting to be Klingon, then you're like, okay, I guess Worf has some, like, there's some reason as to why he holds on to these ideals, because now we have this even worse character to like scoff at to make Worf look better. Or like Waxana Troi, horribly written character. Like, I could just go on and on. Like, pretty much every character is written horribly from a modern perspective, but back then it was normal. So that's where it's only with like hindsight can we look at Geordi and be like, okay, they definitely like castrated this dude, made him awkward, made him this weird subservient character, and then only
Geordi create some new like $20 word with 40 syllables to save the ship today. That's the Scotty moment. Create a gigantic chemical name that can never exist, and we'll inject it into the warp core, and stop the thermolytic reaction or something.
Yeah, but again, this is where they would like drift into these terrible places where they're like, oh, we'll take his visor away and remind you that he's handicapped, and it's like, this is like those types of switches to back where you're like, oh, Geordi's saving the day, but you know, if you just took away his visor, he's gonna have to fucking feel around the room, and that's where, remember, Geordi's still kind of weak.
Actually, you know what? got a really good point. There's an episode where they try to render the Enterprise tries to render assistance to the Packlids, which are this like group of spacefaring but don't have any real technology. They only just take technology from other spacefaring races.
Yeah, and they kidnap Geordi.
They can kidnap Geordi. He has a phaser. He knows how to use it. He's also been trained in Starfleet, whatever, two-handed baseball bat arm swing techniques. So he knows how to defend himself because we all know that nothing can stop the two-fisted baseball swing. The Packlids kidnapped Geordi.
And he's got a fucking visor that should make it pretty easy for him to nail a target. Like, there's no reason Geordi with that goddamn visor.
He's a cyborg. He's a freaking cyborg.
Miss.
They never fully explore the extent of his cybernetic augmentations, but I'm fairly certain that, yeah, he should be like a sharpshooter. He's probably one of those guys that in theory, when they were creating the characters, yeah, he could probably like shoot a flea off of a dog at like, 10,000 yards or something like that.
We never got anything like that.
No. He might be the best pilot in all of Starfleet, but we just never get to see it.
Oh yeah, that's like, man.
I mean, anybody who can make the Enterprise.
When he got kidnapped, he's playing a fucking question game with the goddamn computer, like goddamn loser. Which is where I'm like, who wrote this shit? This lonely motherfucker, so goddamn lonely. He's like, computer, let's play 20 questions. Like, who are you? Who are you? This dude should be catching up on some warp field theory or some shit, or writing some new warp field theory. Not so goddamn lonely. He needs to play 20 questions with the computer. It's like, it's those little things. Whereas a black guy who understands what's happening to that character is like, oh, we can let him be smart, but only so smart. Or we can let him be handsome, but only so good with ladies. He can't be good with ladies and smart. We can't do that. He can't be handsome and good with ladies and the engineer and he's a sharpshooter. No. We can't do that. That's just too much for one black man to have positive. So we got to like make him awkward and like always falling in love with computer programs. And he's so goddamn lonely. He plays 20 questions with the computer. And it's like, at the time, it seems like little quirks when you're in the 90s and like, it's not obvious what they're doing with this person because he's black. But when like LeVar Burton is up for the Jeopardy hosting and the other guy that actually wins is some fucking rando, that's when it puts all of Geordi's existence into like this weird, oh, LeVar Burton has a glass ceiling as LeVar Burton, and some random white dude is going to still be able to come in and step in and take LeVar Burton's job in 2021, even though it's fucking LeVar Burton. Like,
yeah. I'm pretty sure that between like Mr. Rogers and LeVar Burton, more people born between like 1970, whatever, 75, say, and 1990 are able to read than
of course
than anyone wants to admit. Especially LeVar Burton, though, like that dude.
Can you like this is where I mean, can you name the guy that took over Jeopardy briefly and got fired because he was also the producer during the search? Can you even name him without Googling him?
Nope.
He wasn't on Community. Troy Barnes, as a fucking fictional character, wasn't obsessed with that guy. Nobody knows who the fuck he was. How the fuck do you get a job over LeVar fucking Burton?
I don't even know who's the host of Jeopardy right now. Who's the host of Jeopardy?
I don't know. Nobody fucking cares. Once once
Without
they did that
Trebek,
shit
does
to
it even
LeVar,
matter?
I think it might be Miam Bialik, actually. It may be. I'm not even positive. I know at one point she was, but then they found out she was like anti-trans radical. I don't think she said some. She may have said some very specific anti-trans stuff, like on Twitter, not like on Jeopardy. Oh, okay. I think she still is. Okay.
Oh, well. Apparently she walked back her New York Times op-ed.
Oh, she walked it back, huh?
Yeah. Whoops, got too close to the edge there. Oh, man. She's a smart person, a very well-educated person, and it's always just surprising as fuck when somebody who appears to be intelligent and well-educated comes out and says some extremely dumb shit. Having to walk back an op-ed on the New York Times is pretty serious.
You had to issue 3 apologies for that op-ed. Jesus. Wow. Oh yeah, that's what it was. But I had forgotten about that. That was terrible. That was a horrible thing to write. I don't know why she wrote that.
Well, that just changes my entire reflection on Big Bang Theory, or her character in Big Bang Theory. Whatever. Actors and fictional characters can obviously do whatever they want to, because it's all just entertainment or something. This is why the comedians are all, well, not all of them, why some comedians are aggravated because they can't tell jokes anymore. Jokes that aren't funny because they exist at the detriment of other humans that actually exist. They can't tell those jokes, and they're sad. They're kind of upset about it. And I can understand that. They spent their entire lives crafting a skill based around demeaning people, and they're not allowed to use that skill. That's gotta hurt a little bit.
Man, this is like a weird time in that, like, Big Bang Theory used to be associated with like smart people and like, oh, this is a show for smart people, or what the public's perception was. And then it slowly drifted into this, like, everybody on the show is I mean, not everybody, but the people on the show are all doing some other shit that then the air of being like high intelligentsia is gone, and then it's just like who watched the last few seasons of Big Bang Theory? And that's where I'm, it's like,
I mean, I marathoned it, the last 2 seasons of it, because I wanted to see how it resolved, and I don't remember a damn thing about it. Like nothing.
I mean, but you weren't like watching it on the night that it came out on television.
Oh no.
Right?
I was.
That's like, that's what I mean. The only reason you were able to watch it is because people supposedly were like tuning in on the nights it was like broadcasting, and then it was like they got enough ratings to get another season, and it's like that. It because wasn't it like 12 seasons?
I don't even know. I just remember putting it on and watching all the way through to the end. It was the kind of thing that the characters stopped being.
Yeah, they got 12 seasons. They got 12 fucking seasons.
Like Leonard stopped being Leonard. Sheldon stopped being Sheldon. Amy.
Yeah, I think I stopped
like,
around season 7.
They were just they were phoning it in.
Oh yeah, when everybody got I usually tap on shows when people get pregnant, unless it's like a demon baby or something, and like that. Only if it's a demon baby does it hold the interest of like, oh, this fictional character's getting married. Well, they're fucking fictional. I don't give a shit. It's not a real marriage. This is not a real baby. Like doing these milestones for characters as like filler is always a sign to me that the shit is like about to go really downhill, or like it's no longer the thing that you were there for because they have to start falling on these tropes.
I enjoyed the fight at the She-Hulk wedding episode. Not a She-Hulk wedding, it was her friend's wedding.
No, but she didn't get married.
That's true.
She's not the person getting married. That's what I'm saying.
And she was also getting shit canned with the side jobs too.
It's not the same thing at all. She had sex with 3 different people in 8 episodes. Not the same.
Yeah.
Not the same. And it's like, it's not even about the sex so much as the way that they are like using her relationship dynamic is not, she's not Daredevil's girlfriend. Like the casual sex between her and Matt Murdock is merely a plot point in the larger, like the plot between her client and Daredevil and Luke actually usurped the romantic plot was like a subplot. So when they do that type of thing where like the romantic plot is not the main plot, that's good writing. That shit doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, that's the background information that makes this story more realistic.
It gets put in the background. Like they totally found a way to put that shit in the background, but still include it. Like we didn't need a whole episode of Jen and Matt courting. Like that's all background shit. They only need to like make a little small gesture here or there, or like he bought her a drink, and it's like we don't need 20 minutes of that. Like you need 2 minutes of that. You know, the rest of the episode was well written, and we don't even know, like at the end of the episode, like I really doubt they're not together. Matt had to go back to fucking Hell's Kitchen, so they're definitely not like. Matt's a whore. They're not about to have a long distance relationship. No fucking way.
I really enjoyed the Daredevil inclusion. I thought that was very well executed. Very, very well executed, especially their fight scene in the parking garage. That was a lot of fun.
Is it me, or did he use his like regular accent? Because I thought it was my imagination at first. But I went back and listened to like him talking in the original Daredevil show. It's not. I don't think it's the same Matt Murdock. I think he's playing a different Matt Murdock from a different universe. I think we're in, like Ultimate's universe. I think the Matt Murdock in the Netflix show is probably in.
Well, the costume's different.
I mean, the costume's definitely different, obviously. but
to me, that's
I
the
think
biggest
his whole
indicator.
accent's different.
Well, I didn't catch that, but
I didn't know Charlie Cox was fucking British until this episode. I'd never heard him talk out, like, I never like watched an interview with him or anything.
Huh.
But like when I watched this episode, I'm like, is this motherfucker British? And then because of his accent, and I'm like, dude, I watched 3 goddamn seasons of Daredevil, and not one time did I ever think this motherfucker's British. But the first thing out of this mouth in this show is like, is this motherfucker British? And sure enough, yeah, of course, Charlie Cox. But that's why I'm saying I think he's intentionally playing a different, like his accent sounds closer to his real life accent, whereas in the Daredevil Netflix show, he's doing a much different accent as far as I can tell, which is where I'm like, I don't think it's my, like at first I thought it was my imagination, but when I went back and listened to the original like accent he did on the Netflix show, I don't think it's the same Matt Murdock.
yeah.
I think and further with like Multiverse of Madness having just taken place, I think one of the main reasons we are getting this like She-Hulk Daredevil dynamic is so that we can get a variation on Daredevil that's like the more jolly, like ketchup and mustard Daredevil versus the dark fucking Crimson Avenger in the Netflix show. But that's again,
I thought they were trying to make a suit that was more flashy. Like it.
I mean, yeah, of course. Like that's what the show is. I feel like that's the foil. Like that's what they're distracting with of like, oh, he's getting a suit upgrade. This is like a flashier upgrade. But we never saw the suit he was wearing before. I don't think it's the same Daredevil. I mean, this is like obviously speculation, but the accent, I'm definitely leaning on the accent as like a big tell that we're not dealing with the same Matt Murdock that was in Netflix seasons 1 through 3. It's canon. They're saying that Daredevil is canon, but they're not clarifying if we're looking at the same Daredevil. Because that doesn't, just because it's canon doesn't mean it has to be the same Daredevil. Because we're in the multiverse. You know, I think it's always important to remember.
Oh, speaking of multiverses, did you hear about the Daredevil announcement?
No.
Oh, so Ryan Reynolds has been trying to make another Daredevil movie, and things keep getting pushed around. The story keeps changing. All the normal excuses for delays in production, and so he creates this video where he's trying to explain everything and what's been going on. And in the background, Hugh Jackman just walks by and he says, "Hey, Hugh, you wanna be in this movie?"
Deadpool.
Sorry, Deadpool. Sorry.
That's what I was like. Ryan Reynolds is Daredevil. Okay.
My brain was. Anyways, sorry, Deadpool. And so there's going to be a Deadpool movie with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
Yes, I did see that one. That's where I was like,
yeah, I'm sorry. We were talking. Talking about Daredevil. My brain just kept on Daredevil, but my mind wanted to talk about the Deadpool movie because that's actually kind of interesting. Where do they re-inject Wolverine and Deadpool together?
Again, I think they're gonna.
Are they gonna do a Hulk movie?
No. I don't think they can. So. Did you see Deadpool 2?
Yeah.
Like they gave him the MacGuffin of all MacGuffins, so like they can do literally anything, and we won't be able to predict it in that. They've already clarified. I mean, it can't be Logan, but I'm pretty sure they confirmed it's not like that Logan Wolverine. So like,
oh yeah, well the old man Logan is a very disparate timeline.
Right, which is even more reason they can use that time travel device from the end of Deadpool 2 to just go to any fucking multiverse and grab any Wolverine. Like, it could be Weapon X, it could be Alpha Flight, it could be Hulk versus Wolverine, it could be like him just chilling, like, or at the end of what was it, that First Class, where
where he tells them to go fuck themselves.
Yeah. I feel like that Wolverine might be the one that Deadpool goes after, or he might go after the one from fucking the Wolverine movie that killed Deadpool. Remember that?
Oh yeah, when they took Wade's mouth away from him.
Yeah, which is all completely dead Deadpool. I guess they brought him back. I forget exactly how that shit played out. But even still, I feel like even more reason that Deadpool specifically goes and finds that Wolverine, kills his other self again, just to be like, fuck that version. Because nobody, like, Ryan Reynolds had to hate that version of Deadpool. So, like, going and getting Wolverine from that movie and, like, joining forces with him by starting off murdering the other Deadpool is, like, that's the type of shit is, like, it's not from any comic book necessarily, but it would be the perfect type of way to sort of bridge.
There's a good story there, because if he can prevent Stryker from shooting Wolverine in the head and blanking his memory, there's an entire story universe of Wolverine that remembers everything and can do everything differently.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a way more interesting version of Wolverine.
This is where it allows for this whole different timeline to exist. I really enjoy when the MCU does different shit in the movies that's like homage to the comic books, but something new. So it's like, if they could do something like that, I'm much more interested in that than like redoing something from the comic books verbatim. Like that's the type of shit that interests me as someone who's a fan of the comics, but also wants them to keep innovating in the way that they tell stories, because that is, like, I think the source of the fun in the, like, ability to find a novel story in all of these stories that have been told. It's like, we can still find a way to tell a new story about Wolverine and Deadpool.
I don't think we could find any two people out of a sampling of all of the comic book nerds that ever existed who could read Hulk, Wolverine, and tell the same story without the comic in front of them. Retell it, I mean. And so I think it's reasonable that when stories are adapted, that things change. They have to change on some level. Part of me wants to be a purist and wants to see just the verbatim storyboard brought to life. And then there's the part of me that appreciates when I see some kind of nuance that I didn't see in the story itself when I read it. And then they're bringing that to under the spotlight. And I appreciate that. I also really disliked what happened to the X-Men franchise for those first few movies. That was all terrible.
Yeah.
And then that last Phoenix movie, that last one, that Phoenix movie was terrible.
Oof.
That was like the worst version of. There's no way that group of X-Men could stand up to this Shi'ar. I'm just that's not happening. But somehow they didn't do their battle on the moon either.
No, you could tell they ran out of money.
Guys, we can't have the fight on the moon. We spent too much money on the CG for the fucking spaceship.
That climax battle was like so disappointing, man. Because I was like,
it's supposed to happen on the fucking surface of the moon.
Yeah, I was ready to be okay with that film. But goddamn, that climax is so disappointing. It really tarnishes the entire film. Like, Dark Phoenix is not a bad film up until Act 3. Up until Act 3, it's decent. It's like, okay, Okay, I'm here. Whatever, cool. But then Act 3, it's just like
Yeah, the fight in the train was
it
cool.
might as well be. It's not even good enough to be on CW. And I enjoy CW, so I'm not trying to diss CW shit. But like the CW shows make Act 3 of Dark Phoenix look like community theater or some shit. It's real bad. CG is just
If that had been the build up to the battle on the moon's surface, that would have been cool though. I'll concede that it looked all right.
It should have been in Act 1. If that fight was in Act 1,
that would have been good.
It wouldn't have been. Yeah, that's an Act 1 fight, not an Act 3 climax.
I'm pretty sure when the Phoenix bursts into flames and returns to ash, it's kind of like a world destroying event. That didn't happen. Yeah, the future looks good in terms of what's possible. It's just a matter of how well it's executed and if the showrunners can keep on track, I think.
Well, based on what happened with She-Hulk's initial previews and how they changed it, I think that they are going to be better about like ensuring their visual product is quality. I'm not sure how that is going to transfer to the writing. But I haven't watched it yet, but I've only seen good things about Werewolf by Night. And because of the tone of it, it was like I wasn't necessarily like rushing to watch it. But I've seen like pretty glowing reactions to it. So
I could use a good Lycan story.
More interested.
Werewolves are interesting. There's got to be a whole. I know that there's a whole subculture of Lycan.
It's kind of like a retro style. Like the whole reason I wasn't even really interested in the first place was it's like done kind of film noir, but camp film noir.
Okay.
So that's where I'm like, this looks like it's for kids or something, but I guess like maybe not. So yeah, I'm willing to give it a try just because I think at this point it is good for the MCU to like do different shit and try different things so it's not feeling so formulaic. I think that is why She-Hulk is like it
she's like
doesn't feel like anything else in the MCU.
She's
because they're breaking the formula.
Well, she's an anti-Disney princess.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good.
Yeah. And I think them embracing the anti-incel attitude has worked tremendously for them, where it's like if they had tried to appease everybody and were like, oh, we're not trying to offend men, we're not trying to, and it wouldn't have worked. So it's like, no, they're definitely doubling down on the fuck incels. This is not for you. If you don't like our show,
it reminds me of the Gillette commercial, the barbecue commercial that not everyone, that a bunch of people got all up in arms about. It's a commercial, it's a show. It's not worth getting that worked up over. And they weren't even complaining about the actual story though. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't complaining about the story. Weren't complaining about the message. They weren't complaining about the intent. Just superficial shit. Man, imagine if they'd gotten the skin tone of the Hulk just a little bit off. People would have been throwing fits all over the place.
Well, I'm surprised they haven't like just randomly made him gray. Like,
You think people are ready for that?
well, I mean, we've seen a lot of variations on the Hulk in that. If you go back and watch the Ed, what the fuck's that guy's name?
Ed Norton?
Ed Norton. Man, that guy.
Well, there was also the Eric Bana Hulk.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, but I don't think the Eric Bana Hulk is as like paced well.
No, it's poorly paced and a little too cerebral at the end.
Yeah.
Like his battle with his dad is way too mind bendy and not enough Hulk smashy.
Yeah. Like I shouldn't be falling asleep during a Hulk movie.
The fight scene where he's running around the canyon and grabs the missile and throws it, bites the end off and spits it back into the helicopter. That's pretty serious business. And when
that's like straight out of the video game.
Yeah, and when he grabs the tank by the barrel and swings it around and tosses it, that's some straight up Hulk mastery. Ang Lee's vision of the Hulk in battle is fantastic, but his rendition of the Hulk every other moment is too mind bendy and not enough Hulk smash. That's my final analysis of the Ang Lee Hulk.
I feel like the Eric Bana movie was trying to be the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction video game, but just failed miserably on that front. In that, even some of the animations look like they were out of a video game.
Yeah,
which at the time is like maybe the best they could do.
Yeah, I think Eric Bana's Hulk was too troubled, too broody, and Ed Norton's was too nervous. But he was a much better Hulk than Eric Bana.
I mean, I guess like
I really liked the Ed Norton Hulk.
The tone of the Norton one was meant to be more like a horror.
Yeah, and
in that, I think they did a good job of making the Hulk seem more like an anti-hero.
Yeah,
and
like the moment when they shoot the rocket at him and he shrouds what's her name, Betty.
Yeah, was it?
And he like exhales to blow the explosion away because he can't actually cover her body with his body. He exhales. That's like a really tiny detail that I had to watch that scene over and over again to figure out what was going on. But you can see the Hulk's body expand and then exhale really, really rapidly in these like 5 frames as the explosion starts to happen. That's like a scene in that movie where I feel like they nailed it. They got it so perfectly. That's like the strength of the Hulk. He can exhale and deflect the massive concussion of an explosion.
Well, and they just get points for having fucking Hicks and Gracie slap the shit out of the Hulk and not get his ass beat. That's like points.
Yeah,
because that's like straight deep cut for martial artists.
Yeah, getting slapped around by a jiu-jitsu master.
Yeah.
That ab exercise in the beginning is crazy.
Yeah, because he's also a yoga master.
Yeah.
Which is why not why, one of the reasons he's so good at jiu-jitsu. helps to be flexible.
He uses that yoga flame technique. Man, Dawson, what a fucking weird character.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's racist or not.
I'm pretty sure it's racist as fuck. That's like a terrible I don't know. I guess Ken was
It's
Japanese
very
and Ryu was very American. They were both American looking.
well. I mean, his name is Ryu, so I
Yeah.
don't think that's an American name, right?
No, it's not. But
not from any state I've ever heard. Yeah, Ken's red as fuck though.
I never actually got the vibe that Ryu was from Japan.
No.
Built like he's from one of the cattle states. They're all built like they're from a beef state where they grow lots of cattle. Steak country.
I feel like there are instances where it's like more stylized, so it's like more obvious that I think he is Japanese.
I'm sure he is. I mean, realistically, all the characters are Japanese. There's some like weird Japanese caricature of whatever they decided to base a character off of. I'm pretty sure all of their characters are some kind of weird racist caricature on some level. Like, where does Guile come from? Obviously, some kind of Air Force or Marine or Army fighting dude. And then the backstory that they retconned that Chun-Li wasn't just seeking revenge, but she's also a police officer for Interpol.
So have you watched that film recently?
No.
It's not bad. It's actually one of the better Street Fighter films, except for the fact that it might as well just be like a cop drama with like some fighting.
Okay. Does she do the fan kick? And does she?
I think she does a fireball at one point.
Holy
but
shit.
It's like nobody's wearing anything that makes you. It's like when they tried to make Batman realistic, they did that shit to Street Fighter, so everybody's wearing like regular clothes.
Oh. Did she put on her ceremonial costume ass kicking wear though? Or was she dressed
I think
up
at one point she does. But it's for like this weird mid movie dance scene that's like it's like a fucking Hype Williams video or some shit where they're doing like a choreographed dance and like
oh man, I don't remember this movie at all. I remember watching it.
It's like you definitely feel like you're having a fever dream at some point. But that's why it's like it's not a bad watch. It was on HBO Max, which is where it's like, oh, okay, whatever, the Street Fighter movie. Because I remember seeing it in the theater and being like, what the fuck is this? It was super disappointing with like seeing it in the theater, but now it's like fun and it's like misfire in how I see what they're trying to do, but they failed miserably. But I can enjoy it anyway because it's still something. It's like
it's a cop drama, and it's got characters loosely based off of a fighting game that we all love. So it puts two things together that have a fairly significant overlap in the Venn diagram.
So I was also like sketch about Kristen Crook being cast, but she's actually Chinese American.
Oh.
So like, yeah, that's why I was like, oh shit, they actually got something right. So once I looked at it and I'm like, ooh, this is real sketch casting Kristen Crook is fucking Chun-Li. What are you guys doing here? And then I looked at her wiki page. I'm like, oh shit, they're not doing the wrong thing here. So that's where I was like, okay, I'll give this shit a chance. And then, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised at how well it held up for what it was, but it's definitely not a Street Fighter movie. It's like anything but a Street Fighter movie.
Well, with the current iteration of Street Fighter, isn't there some kind of like cyborg or alien thing, whatever that thing is? Wait, I haven't even played the most recent version of Street Fighter. The last one I played was 4.
Yeah, I've played 5. It's like there's a lot of new characters.
Man, there's so many characters already.
Oh yeah, so they had Neil McDonough play M. Bison. Well, it's not even M. Bison, it's just Bison in this one, which was like, oh God. Yeah, it's like a really dark film. And now that I'm remembering, like, there were times when I'm watching it where I'm like, holy shit, this movie is fucking dark. But you're like, it kind of catches you off guard. It's really crazy that it's a PG-13 film. Thinking about like some of the scenes that it wasn't like sexual or anything, but the violence in there is like way rated R worthy.
It's considered to be a non-canon spin-off, but also a theatrical tie-in to Street Fighter 4.
This movie?
Yeah, so it's non-canon, but it's tied to it theatrically.
Yeah, it's barely.
Who came up with that? How a non-canon theatrical tie-in spin-off?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who thought this was a good idea.
They just
call it if they would have just called it anything else, it would have done gangbusters at the box office, like, or probably on CW. Because if we're keeping it real, Neil McDonough is like best on CW. Like when you put him in like a Captain America movie for whatever reason, he like everybody makes him look frumpy and like he doesn't fit in. I love Neil McDonough as an actor, don't get me wrong, but for whatever reason, he just does not look right next to like Chris Evans or like fucking Chris Hemsworth or whatever. And it's like, it's not even about the man's appearance. But like when you look at Dum Dum Dugan versus Damien Dark commands the screen. Damien Dark is like a threatening villain. You would not want to fuck with Damien Dark. But then when you put Neil McDonough like on a big screen, for whatever reason, his Bison didn't work on a big screen, but on a small screen, it works. Like, I don't know. There's certain people who work on a big screen and certain people
been in
don't.
So many shows and so many movies that I enjoy.
He's a great actor. Don't get me wrong. That's where I'm
absolutely. No,
he's I don't want it to sound like I'm dissing him as an actor because he's a fucking amazing actor.
He's on Star Trek First Contact. He rose to the level of Trek. That's like that's a blue ribbon right there. He's all over Arrow. Like, he's all over the 100. He's all over He's all over CW. He's all over DC stuff and Marvel stuff.
Yeah, and it's just like, for whatever reason, like in Captain America, First Avenger, he's just like, you don't give a fuck if his character lives or dies. You do not give a fuck if. Did you know Dum Dum Dugan existed? You know what I'm saying? Like, Dum Dum Dugan is like a really background character in the MCU. And I don't think it's Neil McDonough's fault, but it's like, yeah, his MCU presence is just not as powerful as his CW presence. Maybe he's doing that. Maybe he's dialing it back. I would give him the benefit of the doubt and be like, oh, he's dialing it back here. Only certain people would be able to dial it back so they don't look like they're trying to steal a scene. And I would give him the benefit of that doubt to be like, maybe he's just downplaying his acting. Like, you don't get that part being a poor actor. Like, you don't get in the MCU being a poor actor. So it's like,
I don't think anyone gets on Disney's roster by being poor at anything.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So if anything, he did exactly what he was directed to do.
Right, and that's why I'm like,
I think he seems like the kind
to me
of guy
is why
like, he executes with precision.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'd be inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt that it was like he was directed to downplay his presence. But like I said, very few people are even capable of doing something like that, to be like, to go from a dynamic to a seemingly just like phoning it in. Like, yeah, I'm here. I'm in the background.
Man, seriously, his filmography is fantastic.
Yeah, he plays a really good villain. And you know what? Maybe that's it. Maybe he's not good at playing good guys, because Dum Dum Dugan's a good guy.
He is good at playing guys that are characters that I dislike.
Yeah,
he's very good at that. But he does everything. He's got dramatic roles, and he's been in comedies, and he's been in action movies, and he's been in. He does the full spectrum. He's a diverse actor.
Very, very versed.
He's in Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
And apparently, so I guess so this is another aspect that I only learned from I saw an interview with him on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, which I had to stop watching because of too much fucking advertising. Anyway, Neil McDonough basically won't do any sex scenes because of his religious beliefs. So that's where Hollywood, in his
on the Incredible Hulk animated series, he is Banner.
Huh, I didn't know that.
So he's also the Hulk. Oh, that's even cooler.
He said that they won't give him certain roles because he refuses to do nude scenes. Which is, I've never heard a man say that before him.
Well,
and that for whatever reason, maybe no other men are averse to doing those scenes to the point where they lost jobs because of it. But this is the first male actor where I've heard who's still also famous enough that you listen to his podcast or a podcast interviewing him. Cause I'm sure he's not the only one who's done it, but maybe the other people that didn't have enough of a career to tell their story about it.
Yeah.
But I thought that's interesting where it's yeah, now that I think about it, there's no
big ups to the guy for standing up for his convictions.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't want to engage in a kind of behavior for a job, then they shouldn't have to.
Oh, for sure.
And they shouldn't be penalized for it. That's just even weirder. But, Hollywood. Maybe that's why he's on the Disney roster, though, because he's no, I won't do that. And they're yes, we like people who are like this. No, Disney likes people who do what they're told.
I mean, She-Hulk, just like I said, 3 dudes in 8 episodes. So I don't think they're worried about that too much. They're not showing it, but that's still a Disney Plus show. Straight up on Disney.
Has there been a more free-spirited female character in the history of Disney?
Mm-mm.
No, there really hasn't.
I mean, at the same time, though, does Disney not expect their like
Wait.
audience to grow up.
Disney
Like
bought
their
Fox.
audience has to grow up.
Disney bought Fox, and Fox owned the Alien properties. So now
Yeah.
Ripley is a Disney princess. So she's definitely the most like free spirited. She does what she wants within the limitations of her contract with the corporation.
Well, so it's like Disney owns, I think, 80% of ESPN, and then ESPN made a deal with the UFC. So like basically UFC was answering to Disney effectively through ESPN. So it's like Disney damn near owns everything at this point.
Disney princesses of the UFC.
Then one championship is on Amazon. So it's like all our entertainment is like coming through Disney or Amazon at this point. Like,
Oh man! Wait, does
capitalism's eating its own tail.
Does Walmart own USA Network yet? Because that's like very fitting. That would make a lot of sense.
No, I would not doubt that that's also owned by Disney. Comcast, NBC.
Oh, yep, Comcast.
Oh, that's what it is. Disney owns ABC, not NBC. One letter off. Wait, they might own NBC Universal. Holy shit. Disney owns Hulu. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. So yes, 66% of Hulu is owned by Disney and the other 33% is Comcast.
Doesn't Amazon have some kind of interest in Hulu too? Or is it's
I mean, they might have sold it to Disney.
Oh. Or maybe it's HBO that has some kind of interest in Amazon. I know they're all like feeding off of each other, because I remember at one point Amazon was streaming like Sopranos and old HBO shows, or a lot of shows, Showtime stuff too. So this is one of those things that's I found amusing. At one point, everyone, 20, 30 years ago, you got a premium cable subscription to like Starz or Showtime or Cinemax or HBO or whatever. And that's where a lot of movies were available. And now you can still get subscriptions to these groups, but it's through like Hulu or through Amazon or through Comcast. It seems like nothing has really changed. Especially with all of the commercials that happen everywhere. I think that I see more commercials just from the internet than I ever did from television.
Oh my God. The chart of what Disney owns is alarming. It's alarming. They own damn near everything. In 2022. Jesus Christ.
Are you looking at the chart that looks like a Mickey Mouse head?
Yes. Fucking GoPro. Photo bucket. What? They own everything.
Oh, wow. There's a bunch of stuff that doesn't even fit within the mouse's head.
Yeah. Fox Networks, 20th Century Fox, FX, National Geographic, Hulu, A&E, all damn near half the cable networks. Looks like Jesus Christ.
They're responsible for History Channel and Lifetime, and what else? Vice.
Vice, yeah. A&E, Crime and Investigation Network.
Holy
wow! It's like, it's one thing to talk about it, but when you actually see all of the
but
things,
you can't even see all of it all at once.
Yeah,
either.
you can't see it all at once. It's impossible to see all at once, which is in itself alarming.
I'm looking on a 42-inch 4K monitor, and I can't see the whole thing all at once because it's to see it all at once. You have to zoom out far enough that the text
becomes illegible.
Yeah. Just turns into little dots when you can see the entire picture.
But this is how black holes form. This is too much mass. Too much mass all in one place. Is going to suck up everything in its gravitational orbit, and eventually it's all just going to become white noise.
So what if that's what a lot of content creators' goals are to create something that will be absorbed by the orbit or the gravitational well of the Disney singularity?
Ultimately, that's what things are trying to do now. It's like this is why I said the internet was a mistake. It's like all anything cares about anymore is going viral. It doesn't even matter why. It's like if it gets its viral moment, it made it. And it doesn't know what to do with that viral moment. Like if you go look on people's posts when they make a viral post, it's like they try to advertise their shit or try to promote other people's shit, and then it doesn't work. The whole viral moment is just such a fleeting thing that is like a huge concentration of global attention that doesn't result in anything. And it's like, I can only imagine there has to be some sort of like post-viral depression that is associated with people realizing that like nothing actually changed in their life after they went viral.
It's funny, like a buddy of mine and I built a rat rod years and years ago, and another friend of ours wrote an article about it and put our pictures of it up on the internet. And then at one point it was on Steampunk Workshop, where it then ended up on Boing Boing and was the topic of discussion for steampunk and rat rod culture on Boing Boing for an entire day. And inside the article, the person wrote, it's like, oftentimes the people that are doing the most interesting things don't have time for social media. And so we read some of the comments and got a kick out of it, and then went back to our day-to-day lives because, great, we're Boing Boing famous for 20 hours. Now what?
Right? Like, then what?
Yeah, I mean, like, really, what does that actually translate to? Like, my clout score, remember when clout was a thing? My clout score shot through the roof for 20 hours. For 20 hours, I had, like, internet clout that was damn near godlike, and then it evaporated. Like, that's how fickle the internet is, and that's the whimsy of the internet. Boing
That's
Boing
the attention
famous.
span of like a baby goldfish, not even a full-grown adult goldfish.
Right? I mean, Boing Boing famous, Reddit famous, Facebook famous. None of that actually translates to anything. You have to have like 100,000 views, or no, 1,000 views or 2,000 views before you're even eligible for YouTube to start paying out. Thousands of subscribers. It's not even real.
Yeah.
Exceptional
And then it's like, something really low, like $10 per
Exceptional
million
Randos
views
show
or
is produced
something.
live
Oh,
on
yeah.
Sunroom
I don't even know. I don't even know.
I think
if
once
it's
you get a
that
million
high.
views, you get like $1,000.
RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.